If you are a local Tucson restaurant owner looking to increase sales and build community engagement, this episode is for you. This week, I talk with Shane Reiser, CEO and head foodie of Tucson Foodie. Shane will share with us his mission to turn a passion for food into a thriving community platform. In this episode, we'll talk about how Tucson Foodie supports local restaurants, how he has changed the business model since he purchased the company last year so that restaurants no longer have to pay to be a part of Tucson Foodie. And he'll talk about how the community can support Tucson and local restaurants by participating in the Foodie Passport and Insiders Club program, as well as some local events. Welcome to the No Hesitations podcast, the show where restaurant leaders learn tools, tactics, and habits from the world's greatest operators. I am your host, Christin Marvin, with Solutions by Christin. I've spent the last 2 decades in the restaurant industry and now partner with restaurant leaders to help them overcome burnout, increase retention, reignite their passion, and drive successful businesses. This podcast is sponsored by Schedulefly. Schedulefly provides a simple, web-based, and now app-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you are using pen, paper, Excel, or a fancy scheduling software with tons and bells and whistles that you don't use, Schedulefly is perfect for your business. When I was a regional manager overseeing 7 locations, Schedulefly was our go-to platform for scheduling, and it's hands down the easiest platform that I've ever worked with. Their employee communication tool, awesome for shooting out mass messages about crucial restaurant updates. If you're interested in learning more about Schedulefly, visit schedulefly.com and mention No Hesitations Podcast to get 10% off. Before we jump into today's episode, I have to give a shout out to my former co-host, Nick Spinelli. Nick has some amazing things happening in his life right now and has graciously promoted himself to be a guest on the show. He will be missed, but fear not, he will not be a stranger. So, Nick, thank you for everything you've done to build this foundation and help this show get off the ground. Really appreciate it, buddy. Okay, today we are welcoming Shane Reiser to the show. Shane is the head foodie, love this title, of Tucson Foodie, which is the largest media and events platform in Southern Arizona, focused exclusively on the local food and beverage scene. More than a quarter of Tucson's population reads Tucson Foodie each month. Their social media presence exceeds 500,000, and their dinners and festivals draw in tens of thousands of people annually, which is incredible. Hi, Shane. Great to have you on the show. How are you?
Hi, Kristen. Thanks for having me. I'm just wondering what kind of great things Nick Spinelli has happening in his life. That's what I want to know. I'm excited for him.
Yeah, I mean, there's some great life changes. I know he can sometimes be a little bit of a private person, so I'm not going to air everything out for him. Sure. I know you two know each other, but he's got some great personal and professional things happening. Cool. And, good for him for saying, recognizing that he's got more on his plate right now. And setting some boundaries, something that a lot of us are still learning how to do. So,
God, I'm still learning how to set boundaries as well.
Yeah,
it's
me
difficult.
Too.
Have you talked about boundaries on this podcast? Given boundaries are an important part of leadership, right?
Not yet. They sure are. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can dive into that. If you want to come back on the show at some point and talk about that would be amazing.
I know other people that are way better at that than me.
Okay. Sounds good. Just wanted to open that invitation for you. So love it. Well, thanks for being here today. I'm so excited to share your journey with our listeners. You and I had a chance to connect about a month ago, and I just think you have such a fascinating, interesting story, and I'm just super excited about your mission and everything that you're doing with Tucson Foodie. And I'm excited to share some of the challenges that you've shared with me that you have faced since you acquired Tucson Foodie last year, and dive a little bit deeper into your vision for the company and explore why community is such a big deal for you. I know that's one of your big values and a big deal for the company, and showcase how you're building a profitable revenue model with community at the center, because that's not easy to do with the business that you're in, right? So,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's been a journey.
yeah, you have a very interesting background, but it's not necessarily rooted in food. So
No,
share a little bit about how that journey led you to Tucson Foodie.
not at all. In fact, I mean, I had a pretty boring foodie upbringing, I would say. I mean, my mom would cook one of 10, 15 dishes, and we'd go out to eat at a Chinese restaurant and a pizza place. Like, it wasn't until I left the house and realized that there are all these other cuisine types and just, regional cuisines, and started exploring that, and doing some traveling, that I, started calling myself a foodie, if you will.
Nice.
Yeah. Sorry. What was the question? You have to cut that one out. What was it?
Absolutely. No, you're good. Sounds like you and I have similar backgrounds as far as our foodie upbringing. Took some exploration and travel. Wanted to really share with the listeners how your life journey has led you to Tucson Foodie.
Oh gosh, I bought Tucson Foodie on a whim, if you will. So when I moved here in Tucson 9 years ago, I was kind of forced to move here. I moved here to continue co-parenting my daughter. Her mom was in the Air Force. I think a lot of people end up in Tucson for similar reasons. And my girlfriend was like, "Hey, there's actually a lot of stuff going on in Tucson. You shouldn't be so sad about it. Have you found Tucson Foodie on Instagram?" So I created my first Instagram account.
Nice.
No background in social media. And yeah, Tucson Foodie was part of my falling in love journey with Tucson. I started checking out great restaurants. I started making friends in the restaurant scene, restaurant owners, et cetera. They're very accessible here in Tucson. You can, they're usually working in their restaurant. You can meet them. So Tucson Foodie absolutely played a role in my kind of getting to know Tucson and starting to call Tucson home. I've never called anywhere home except St. Louis, where I grew up, until I moved here, and I've lived at a lot of different places in between Missouri and Arizona. Um, so I fell in love with Tucson Foodie, and fell in love with Tucson because of Tucson Foodie. Fast forward, 9 years, COVID hits. Tucson Foodie is not doing so well, and I'm sad because I'm just a reader and subscriber. And I had met Adam, the guy who started Tucson Foodie, a couple of times. So I reached out, and Tucson Foodie had one revenue stream, and we'll get into this a little bit later, kind of all the different new revenue streams that we started to launch and grow. But he had one primary revenue stream, and that was sponsored content from restaurants. He also had a paywall up, right? You could only read so many articles before you had to pay some money to keep reading. But so he kind of had those two revenue streams, but the bulk was restaurants paying him to create content, right? And that went to zero as soon as the mayor shut the city down when COVID hit. So Tucson Foodie struggled hard. And also, Adam had a 9-year run with Tucson Foodie, maybe 10 years, right? Like, he started and grew to what it is today. And he's getting a little burned out. So I helped him explore some possibilities of selling the company. And there was a lot of interest, but everybody was moving really slow. And out of frustration, Adam looked at me one day and said, "Why don't you buy it? Why don't you buy Tucson Food?" And within 5 seconds, I said yes. And in those 5 seconds, all kinds of great stuff happened in my brain. Like, my heart said yes immediately, big emotional pull. I was like, yeah. And then my heart also said, and we can't let Tucson Foodie die. Like, Tucson needs this. This is part of the connective tissue of Tucson. It's an economic driver. All these people I know who run restaurants and work in restaurants rely on Tucson Foodie. It actually has a huge impact. We've dropped articles that overwhelm restaurants, and sometimes that's a problem actually. But
Can be.
Yeah, it can
A
be
good problem to have.
We actually wait a little while after a restaurant. We do a little announcement now, like, this restaurant's opening, and then we wait like a couple of months before we do like a deep story,
Nice.
so they can get their feet under them. So my heart was saying, this is fun. It's a new challenge. You already love the brand and the company, and this can't die. It's important to the city that you now love. But also within those 5 seconds, I thought of 10 different revenue streams that, Tucson Foodie could go after, and all the stuff I always wanted Tucson Foodie to do. But, I wasn't involved, right? So I thought, man, what an opportunity. So I said yes on the spot, and then figured it out.
Nice.
Those are the
I,
best
l-
kind of decisions sometimes, right?
I love it. I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly your heart was leading, your heart and your head working together, but I love that you have said that you're now calling Tucson home, and that Tucson Foodie helped you establish yourself here and build a community, and you want to turn around and do that for other people, which is beautiful. That's a great purpose. So thank you for doing that.
Well, you are very welcome. My background is in community building. I've in entrepreneurship. I've started 7 companies. This is the first company that I acquired, and I highly recommend it. It's so much harder to start from zero, from nothing, and build up and convince the first few crazy people to follow you. Tucson Foodie had a huge audience, a well-loved brand, so much potential. So being able to start with all of that and start to experiment, right, on top of all of the assets and the audience and the numbers and the brand equity that Tucson Foodie had, it's a dream compared to the 7 times I've started companies from zero. Well, my background's in community building. One of my first jobs. I mean, I had a couple like boring corporate jobs, right? And
I
then
love the
I
robot
took,
arms. I know people can't
yeah,
see us, but going through the
I had a couple
motions.
boring corporate jobs. And looking back, they weren't that bad actually, but at the time, I hated them.
Sure.
And I took the jump into working at a nonprofit called Startup Weekend. Startup Weekend was definitely a community. It was a volunteer-run organization. People would sign up to volunteer, and they'd run a 3-day event in their hometown. And this event brought together 125 aspiring entrepreneurs. People would pitch ideas for new companies they wanted to start, or sometimes just a problem they wanted to solve. And they'd form teams and try to literally launch a new company within 72 hours. It was educational, but more important than educational, it was about community building. People forged relationships that were deep. When you're stuck in a room with somebody for 3 days and you're trying to solve a problem, you get to know them really well. You bond. So the relationships that were forged at these events were meaningful. And we'd have tons of stories after a startup weekend about, oh, I started another company with this guy, or I got hired, or I hired this guy. I got married to somebody I met at a startup weekend, right? It brought the community together and connected it more deeply. And we were able to run startup weekends in almost every country in the world. Well over 500,000 people have been to them. It was a high growth nonprofit. And I was the chief operations officer, and I got to train the volunteers that ran these events and see how it changed their lives, transformed, put them on a new path, right? Like some of them eyes open to how much potential they even had as a person. Their whole trajectory changed. Multiple dozens, hundreds of companies actually got started at startup weekends, which went on to hire people, create economic growth, change lives. So it mattered a lot. And I caught the bug of community building. And I called myself a community builder then. And since then, everything I've done, I thought, well, what's the community around this thing? Whether it's a product, a technology, a brand, a person, a cause, whatever it is. There's people around it that identify with it, that want to be involved, that want to help further it. Maybe they just buy it and they use it, but they want to meet other people that use it and learn and connect. People are thirsting for connection, for community. And with just a little bit of effort, you can put some structure around that and bring people together, make it a lot more meaningful, and then use that community as a competitive advantage.
Nice.
Right. So Tucson Foodie is a media company, right? And there are other media companies here in town that, I mean, not anymore. I call it a community now, but one of our primary pillars and how most people know us as a news organization. And there are other organizations that write about restaurants. But I don't hear people, I don't see people wearing their t-shirts, like texting me, thanking me for what we do. Hearing stories about people who met at our events or members of our communities joining, meeting each other and becoming friends. You don't hear that about some of the other, news organizations in town, and that's the big difference. We rewrote our mission statement to be we bring people together over a shared love of food. So everything we do now, I think, how is this bringing people together? And if it doesn't, we don't do it.
I love that. It sounds like you're speaking a little bit about how you're really impacting the community on a large scale, which is great. And bringing people together. People are meeting each other at events, forming friendships, sharing their common love for food. How is Tucson Foodie making an impact directly to restaurants? And you mentioned a little bit of this earlier, but speak a little bit more on that.
Sure. Well, that was already in place when I acquired the company. Already a huge audience. People already looking to Tucson Foodie to hear about new openings, new menus, new chefs, etc. So there's a bit of a thunderclap effect with Tucson Foodie. When we, drop something on Instagram or on our website, or we send something out in our newsletter, it drives people to go shop local. We only write about locally owned businesses. I believe in the power of local economic development. So we focus on that, and a lot of people understand that matters, but also where all the good food is. There's exceptions. Like, I love me some North Italia. The place is fantastic. It's not locally owned. It actually sort of has history here because it's a Fox concept, and Fox got to start here. Right? But so, True Food Kitchen just opened up. They have some great food. Also some deep Tucson connections, but technically not headquartered in the state of Arizona. So when you spend money there, most of the money will flutter across state lines and it's gone. It doesn't help us grow our community or keep our community strong. But all the good food, most of the good food is, family-owned businesses, hiring local. And when you spend local, that money stays in our economy. So we drive business to restaurants through our content, through our news. But now we do it in a new way too, through community. So we've got the Tucson Foodie Insiders Club, and we've got the Tucson Foodie Passport. These are two new products that we dreamed up and launched within the last 12 months. The Passport is directly targeting getting more people to go to local restaurants. And it's kind of a coupon book, right? It's $300 and you get over 3,000. It's now up to like $3,600 worth of vouchers to like 75 locally owned restaurants.
Wow.
And the people that buy that are super foodies, right? They want to explore. Maybe they're stuck in a rut and they go to their same 5 or 6 restaurants and they want to get out and explore because they keep hearing like, wow, Tucson's a UNESCO city of gastronomy. What am I missing? I don't even believe that that's possible. So we reached out to all the best local owned restaurants. They throw vouchers into the Passport, and it's basically as good as cash, right? You go there, you show that you're a member, they take it right off your bill. And it's a great way to, discover and explore. So that drives business straight into the doors of restaurants. And then the Tucson Foodie Insiders Club, that's our club. That's our real community. It's $20 a month. You can pause or quit at any time, but we get people together, and we do that at restaurants, and we do that in all other types of places as well. We do a monthly dinner series with different chefs. It's a private event just for insiders. Chefs open up their restaurant and cook tasting menus so that they can experiment with different dishes they're thinking about adding to future menus. And insiders love that. I love doing that. I think it's really fun. You get to meet the chef, shake their hands, learn about their story. There's a fireside chat. Chef comes out, shakes people's hands, and explains each dish, and it's very accessible. So creating that connectivity between diners that they may not normally get when they just go eat at a restaurant and the chef or the business owner, That's deliberate. We're trying to do that. And then we're just trying to get people to discover just how diverse and delicious Tucson's restaurant scene really is.
Yeah, it's incredible. I think 67% of our restaurants are local here, is what I read.
Do you have any sense, Kristen, if that is higher or lower than the average? I'm guessing higher.
I don't. I need to look into that, but it sounds like an incredible number to me. Just driving around and looking at the landscape, it seems to be a lot higher than where else I've lived, Missouri and Colorado and here. So, yeah.
I do know one stat, Jonathan Mabry, who runs the City of Gastronomy, the Tucson City of Gastronomy here, told me that we have more food trucks per capita than Los Angeles.
Really?
We have a lot. I have a database of 250. I mean, it's massive. I mean, everything north of like 22nd, there's a lot, but not that many. But once you get down to the south side on Irvington and all these other streets, South 16th, South 25th, there are so many trucks and carts. Huge, thriving scene of food trucks down there.
That's awesome. I've got a lot of exploring to do. I've been at the Pit a couple of times over 22nd. Pantano, that's my side of town, but we need to go exploring south for sure, a little bit more than we have. So you mentioned earlier that you immediately said yes to taking over Tucson Foodie. You knew it was struggling. You had some big ideas, 10 revenue streams kind of popped into your mind, right away. What's been your biggest challenge since acquiring the company?
Okay, well, yeah, here's a struggle for buying a business. It already had a reputation, right? And people thought of it in a certain way. And I was looking to change that. So it's been a struggle to change minds and sometimes change hearts, but even just to educate and explain. New team, new leadership, new direction, new products, new offerings. I've learned from talking to people that some people think of Tucson Foodie as nothing more than an Instagram account. Some people thought we were just a newsletter. Some people thought we were just a website. So, taking the city that I live in on this journey with me and getting them to consider Tucson Foodie in a new light has been very difficult. There are still restaurant owners, despite my best efforts to call them, to visit them, that think Adam still runs Tucson Foodie, and are surprised to learn that we don't charge restaurants for anything anymore. We're never going to ask a Tucson restaurant for money. That was important to me. I wanted to take that away. There are people who stopped reading Tucson Foodie when the paywall went up and are surprised and delighted to hear that the paywall doesn't exist anymore. All of our content's free. Oh, and it's been like that for a year. So that's been a challenge. Building a team has been really hard too, Kristen. And now that you're asking me, I've got like 10 other challenges that come to mind.
Say more about the team component.
Sure. Tucson Foodie didn't have any employees when I acquired it, but I was able to get Matt Sterner, who was the editor under Adam, to come back and work full time for Foodie. But everybody else was new to Foodie, and figuring out like what the team needed to even look like. Obviously we investing big in the community, so we need like a community manager, somebody who's deeply connected already and great in front of people. But I was also looking to do things bigger than Foodie had ever done before. So, brought somebody on to tackle operations and build out systems and documentation, and so that we had the infrastructure to scale. Events has been really hard. We've gone through a few different event directors, decided against it, actually, not events, but against having an internal events director. Instead, we're hiring out production companies. And I have a background with events. I've run so many events, big conferences. I don't have the bandwidth, right? It's a full-time job to run festivals and events, especially at the quantity that we do at Foodie. So figuring out what that team needs to look like. I thought it would be one person who was just like, running and controlling. It turns out it's 4 or 5 people that come together, sometimes more intensely than at other periods of time, and We make stuff happen as long as we have good documentation and good processes in place. It works great.
Yeah.
My first hire after Matt was Hannah Hernandez, and that was a dream hire. Social media is also one of our 3 pillars, right? So it's editorial, editorial, social, and community. Those are kind of our 3 pillars at Foodie. And our social media is so big, and so many people follow us, and that's all they do. They interact with us in that way. And it's a funnel now, right? We want to connect people into our clubs through all of these different channels. Bringing Hannah on was just such a key hire. What I did there is I just looked around Tucson, and I found somebody doing social media in the way that I thought it should be done, with the right voice, style, and consistency. And then I just aggressively pursued her.
How long did it take you to bring her on at the team?
A couple months. She was definitely open to it, but getting her to finally say yes and then jump into it, and then supporting her so she's successful. But she's been amazing. She's doubled our social media following.
Wow. In a year.
Across all platforms.
That's incredible.
In now like 16 months, right?
Wow.
Yeah. And she's just so wonderful to work with. She's very client facing, right? She's out shooting. She's leveled up her photography game, her videography game. But she's so good now that she's out bumping into restaurant owners, grabbing content. She's now selling. She tells them about our restaurant partnership program. She lets them know our paywall is down. Like, she's an advocate, an ambassador, not just a full-time employee. But yeah, building a team's been tough. I made the mistake that I've made prior, and maybe if you have any advice on this for me or your audience. How do you avoid shiny object syndrome? Is this just me? Like, I wanted to do so many things right out of the gate. I went big. I did way too much.
Yeah.
Spent way too much money. Didn't kill projects quickly enough.
Mm-hmm.
And, because of that, other things that should have gotten the time and money didn't. And some growth metrics were hurt, but also just the emotional journey of, putting my heart into a project. Like, we launched a video series. We launched like a TV show. And we tried, so it was so expensive, so much of my time. And it just didn't work.
Yeah. It's interesting when you're in that creative space, right? Because you're constantly reinventing, and the more creative you are, the more you're flexing that muscle, the more exciting it is, right? It's kind of like, it's that dopamine rush. I think when you talk about the shiny objects, I mean, I've been growing local restaurants for the last, 20 years. So every day was about chasing shiny objects, right? Every day is different in the restaurant business, especially when you're in high volume. Mm-hmm. And I've really realized that, being an entrepreneur now over the last, just over a year. And there's so many things that I'm learning every day, and there's so many things I want to try, and I want to stay innovative and sharp and build my skills around editing and, the editorial piece, the social media piece, every aspect of what I do. Right. But the best way, and I've got clients that struggle with this too, who have 15 concepts that are different or 6 concepts that are the same and want to grow. If you can get really clear on your vision, and I mean really clear, and detail out every single aspect of that vision, and you are constantly checking in on where you're going, that's going to help you stay connected to it and help inform every decision that you make by saying, hang on, before we go through this process, before we roll out something else, let's talk about how this is helping us get closer to the vision. And
keeping that top of mind, right, is so hard.
Yeah.
Especially when you're growing, you get a little bit of success, opportunities start popping up.
Right.
And some of them seem like, whoa, this could be a game changer.
Totally.
Reminding yourself in the moment, okay, what's my vision? What is the goalpost? Does this get me there? Does it distract?
Yeah. And
right?
you said earlier you jumped at Tucson Foodie within 5 seconds. I don't know if you have a tendency to jump that fast with every object, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes just sleeping on it and then seeing if
Yeah.
that excitement is there the next day can really help slow things down a little bit. So,
Another move that I made maybe 6 months ago. I can't remember exactly when, but I saw this pattern in myself. And I was really happy that I saw this pattern and was able to kind of acknowledge it and do something about it. But I wasn't able to could just change my behavior, and I couldn't stop just saying yes to things that seemed amazing. So I brought somebody on,
nice.
right? I brought a partner on who is amazing at accountability and saying no and staying focused, asking, why are we doing this? What's the priority? Have we looked at the money? Have we looked at the time?
Yeah.
Time is money. So, that's been amazing. And then, of course, actually letting her, actually listening to her, it's supposed to be like, can you do this? And then, I don't know about you. I've worked with coaches and accountability partners, and I wasn't ready, I guess, for that.
Yeah.
But I was ready. And also I had almost run Foodie into the ground. Like it was sort of a desperate situation. I was like, okay, I'm spending way more than we're making.
Yeah.
I'm out of money. I'm so excited for this project, but I'm just burned out and it's hurting my health and relationships. This thing has so much potential, and I still have full confidence this thing's going to happen, but not on this current path because I am sabotaging it. So what can I do?
Yeah. Well, good for you for recognizing that. And that's what team building is all about, right? Is surrounding yourself with people that are different than you, that can challenge you and hold you accountable and offer different perspectives and balance you out a little bit. So good for you for doing that.
Thank you. It was a long learning journey to get there and sort of open up emotionally. The other big mind shift was just like, stop making it about myself. I don't know how to explain that exactly, but I feel like there was a mind shift at some point where I feel like now I just kind of work for Tucson Foodie, and I'm like serving it. I'm of like a service leadership mentality.
Mm-hmm.
Tucson Foodie is bigger than me. I'm not, it's going to exist past me, maybe, hopefully. It's important for the community. It's not mine, right? It's the community's, and it's employing several people. They rely on it. It's not a passion project. It's in a very important organization. It's a group of people that help each other. So I need to run it like in a fiscally responsible way that honors our mission and honors the people that depend on it, including restaurant owners.
Yeah.
So I didn't quite internalize that. I was like, oh, I'm the CEO of this new company. Blah, blah, blah. I'm important. That got in the way. That mindset just got in the way. And it prevented me from looking at kind of the numbers and the books and all of that stuff, and just thinking big and existing up here. I still need to do that, right? As we still need that as leaders. We need to step out. We need to have that, time to think big and have, and like consider our vision and plan annually and all of that stuff. But I used to just live up there. Now I'm like, I've got my CEO dashboard. I've got my numbers. Every decision is data driven, and it feels so good. I don't know why I was not letting myself do that.
Well, it's just not sustainable to make business decisions based on emotion, right? You have to do it based on data. And I see that sometimes with local restaurant owners is they are so busy wearing so many hats, running every aspect of the business when they wanted to be a chef, where they wanted to run the front of the house. And now they're in charge of HR and marketing and hiring and motivation, all these things. And they move so quickly that they often make decisions based on emotion or solving something quickly instead of really looking at the numbers and letting the numbers lead their decision. So
That's so true. Yeah, and they do something, all of them do something really well. And maybe it's make food really, really well. But making the decision to start a company really has nothing to do with that. It's totally an entirely different thing. I caught up with Janos, kind of a famous old OG chef here
I'll
in
be
Tucson.
working with him tonight.
Oh, cool.
Right
Tell him
after
I
this.
said hi.
I will.
Do you know his motivation behind starting Studio Janos?
Yes. But you tell
Okay,
me. You tell me yours.
okay, cool. I was
What
hoping
you
you'd say
heard.
no. I'll tell you the story anyway. Well, he told me, that he's started several restaurants, and after he spent some time not working in restaurants anymore, he kind of realized just how much he missed for people, cooking for people. And that's how he started. He loved cooking for people. But at some point, after you open a restaurant and open another restaurant, and you have chefs working for you and cooks, you don't have time to cook for people anymore. The majority of your time is managing people, is managing finances, is all that stuff you just said, all that HR, marketing, sales, finance, like all these things you have to do. And he hadn't just cooked for people in a long time. So that was sort of the concept behind Studio Janos. It's literally just one table, 12 people. You have to buy the whole damn table.
Yep.
You can't just, so like it's usually a group coming in.
Yeah.
And he's like, welcome, I'm going to cook for you now.
Yeah.
And it's just incredibly intimate. And he's like loving life again.
Yeah. It's, I will say, being, I help him in the kitchen and on the front of house side with the studio. And what he's doing there is so special, and it's so intimate, and it's just an experience that you can never, ever recreate because of the people in the space. And it's beautiful. I mean, we take group photos together at the end of the meals. If
Cool.
it's not part of the show, or the experience. But last time I worked, one of the guests had their camera, and we're like, let's everybody get behind the chef's counter, and the host was like laying on the counter and wanted to take a picture with everybody. There's just a lot of love in that room, and passion. And if you want to hear more about that, listen to episode 7. Janos and I have a really good conversation, and his son Ben joins us for that, which is great. And
great.
He's going to talk a little bit more about it. We've got another episode we shot down at 10 West, and talked a little bit more about TCOG too, City of Gastronomy. And Janos he's hilarious. He is so kind. He's got such a big heart. He truly loves what he does, and it's just contagious. So it's a great experience for sure.
It's true. Yeah, you get around Janos, you're just smiling.
Yeah.
But to bring it back, I think I was getting into that because, even very successful restaurant owners and chefs like Janos, they start because they love doing something, and then they realize that starting a business is a totally different thing. And we have to, I almost wish that I had taken a really pragmatic approach to like the current company that I run instead of making a big passion move, because now I've had to set that aside, which is fine because now everything's changing. Now that I'm like, cool, Shane, you love this. Great. Just keep that inside and run a business, man. A business is an organization exists to deliver a product to make money, so let's deliver products and make money so we can keep this thing going.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to have the business side of it, but the purpose is the driver, right? I mean, you're not going to get up every morning and keep doing what you're doing if you're not passionate about it. And I'm curious from your perspective, now that you've built this team and you've had that mindset shift of serving the community and understanding even more important how Tucson Foodie is even more important to the community, how do you make that sustainable?
You want to talk about like revenue streams?
Sure.
Is that what you're saying? Is that what you mean by sustainable?
Yep.
So one of the first things that popped into my mind in that 5-second window when Adam asked me if I wanted to buy Tucson Foodie was, we've got to diversify revenue streams, right? Tucson Foodie was basically killed by COVID. It had one revenue stream. I didn't want that to happen again. Wanted to build some resilience into our revenue model. So we've launched several revenue streams, and we're I've been wanting to launch more, but Sam was like, dude, like we've invested so much time into building such a great product. Before we move on to the next one, can we go ahead and market and sell the heck out of this, to get it where it, needs to be? So I've mentioned a couple, right? And by the way, I dismantled the only two we had, right, when I took over, which was sponsored content, and which I don't like it. It doesn't feel good. And the paywall, which also I don't like. It doesn't feel good. But it was kind of a hard decision to make because, when I took over a media company, of course, and I never run a media company before, I researched like what are the trends in the journalist world, in the media world. How are regional media companies making money? What are the trends? And paywalls were a trend that's just increasing, right? Ad revenue sinking. It's harder to get people's attention. But I decided to go in a different direction. It was because of my background in community. I thought, I feel like it's going to be more sustainable to be dependent on the people that we serve, which is our audience. But I want to do so in a value added way. I want to do so in a deeply connected way, right? I didn't want to say, we have a bunch of great content and you can read a little bit, but you have to stop. If you want to keep reading it, you have to pay. That almost feels like you're being penalized. It just doesn't feel good to me. And I always hated it personally. Like that feeling when you go to Tucson Foodie and it says, "Oh, you've already read your 5th article this month." It's just like a big middle finger in your face. I hated it. Didn't feel good. So I want good vibes. And back to my, background, bringing people together. So let me just tell you what our revenue streams are. We have the Tucson Foodie Insiders Club. I would say that's probably our biggest bet. This is $20 a month, and you get all kinds of stuff. You get invited to those dinners. We throw monthly mixers at rotating restaurants, and you get showered with discounts, not just at the events that we run, but all kinds of food and beverage events from other organizations around town. So it's for people that want to explore, discover, but also connect and meet other foodies. So we're trying to find all those foodies that want to meet each other in town, bring them together as often as possible and give them cool experiences. That's our big bet. We're at 500 members and I'm trying to get to 2,000. You can do the math on that. 2,000 members is $40,000 a month. That's double our burn rate, right? So for every revenue stream, and I don't know if this is like good financial advice or good leadership advice, but for every revenue stream we've launched, I've thought, does this have the potential to completely fund the company? And if it didn't, not worth it. Like, let's do 5 or 6 big revenue stream bets. And if 5 of them fail, fine. As long as one succeeds, we exist. So Tucson Foodie Insiders is a big bet. If we can get that to 1,000, 2,000 members, we'll be sustainable. And then our organization, our team gets to focus on happiness, right? Reducing churn, increasing loyalty, making people happy so they don't leave. Yeah. I'm way better at that. I'd much rather serve and make sure people are happy and solve their problems than sell them on something. It's a lot easier, I think. The passport is the other thing, right? We can sell enough of those annually to cover our burn rate. Festivals, that's another big one. Events and festivals. We actually acquired a couple of festivals in town that were at risk of being shut down. One is Restaurant Week. Made a ton of sense, super synergistic. We were able to bring Tucson Foodie's audience to bear on Restaurant Week in a way that never happened. So the first year we took it over, we doubled it. Doubled the number of restaurants participating, doubled the number of people that go out during Restaurant Week and try the restaurant menu or the Restaurant Week menu. Triple the economic impact. So we run that. We make money on that through sponsorships. And that's not a ticketed event, but We make good money on sponsorship. Visit Tucson supports us, helps us do all the content we do during the week. And every city needs a restaurant week, right? Most cities do have one. Tucson deserves one, considering how great our food scene is. Yep. We took over the craft beer crawl. We launched a great new festival called the Vegan Night Market. It exploded. I thought 300 people would come to the first one. 1,300 people showed up.
Oh.
Fire code violations left and right.
Love it.
The second one, I thought about 1,000. 3,000 people showed up. Well, our next one is tomorrow. It's our third one.
Nice.
I'm expecting 3,000 people. I don't know. It's a little colder. We'll see. What if 4,000 people show up? What are we going to do? We've taken over the entire lawn of the Tucson Children or at the Children's Museum. We've doubled the amount of vendors. There's so much food. And so that's an exciting one. And then we're planning a festival in October in partnership with Dr. Andrew Weil, focused on wellness.
Nice.
And there's a lot of overlap between wellness and food, and not just nutrition, but many other ways it's connected. So yeah, festivals, huge revenue stream for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been our biggest so far. I'm hoping that Insiders will surpass that soon. But we did lean into advertising. We took the paywall down, but we did something, and I feel lucky for this, but we reached out to the ad agency that represents Eater.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, hey, we have a lot of page views now. And they said, yeah, you meet our requirements. You have to have, I think they require 500,000 page views a month before they even consider working with you. And then they did a bunch of diligence on us. We had to pass all kinds of tests around sentiment analysis. They crawled our entire website. And if we had too many cuss words or negative words, they wouldn't have, because they ultimately bring advertisers to us. So long story short, I think Tucson Foodie was making less than $200 a month on ad revenue through just Google ads. Now that we're represented by Raptive, we make $4,000 to $7,000 a month.
Wow.
On the advertisements on our website. And I hate advertisements. And I was like scared all of our readers were going to run away, but we launched them and nobody's complained, and we make the money, and it supports our editorial staff. It allows us to hire freelancers to write articles. It allows us to hire photographers and videographers to create good content. So that turned out to be a really nice, really passive revenue stream.
That's awesome.
And then we tried to sell direct ads for a long time, and I hated it. Little onesie twosies, $200, $300 ads, So we launched a new thing a couple of months ago. It's working great. We call it a brand partnership, and we make it scarce. So basically, we're working with 20 brands at a time, and they're not restaurants, right? They're anybody that wants to get in front of the foodie audience. A lot of them are food adjacent, like Whiskey Del Bach, mm-hmm. or the Tucson Community Food Bank, or Oatman Farms, packaged food products. We're talking with a dispensary. We're talking with a couple of theaters in town. Right, so we're only going to work with 20 at a time, and we're going to just cheerlead for them in all of our channels: ads, newsletter ads, sponsorships at events, hosting mixers with our members at their facilities, and just be there for them all year for kind of a retainer model. And again, minimum $500 a month, somewhere at the $1,200 a month, 20 brands. You do the math, right? That can actually cover, just through brand partnerships, our entire burn rate. And the company's covered. Only working with 20 companies that we love.
That's awesome.
It's working great, man.
I love it. Well,
back to your advice, right? Like, get really clear on what you do.
Yeah.
Focus. Totally working.
Yeah. And it takes time and practice, right? And reflection. I'm so in awe and impressed with what your team has been able to do over the last 16 months. You've outlined for us so many wonderful ways that you serve and support the community through the Passport, the Insider, all these festivals and events that you're doing. And there's so many wonderful ways that the community can support you too, which is awesome. So thank you. for everything. Thank you for everything you're doing for the community. I know when I moved here, because
You're so
we
sweet.
typically read Eater everywhere we go when we travel, right? We travel for sport, to eat. And Tucson Foodie was, my guide, our guide to where to eat. And we immediately checked out a couple of the recommendations and built trust with your brand, which is incredible. So
that's how I started.
Yeah.
Doing the same thing.
That's great. How can restaurants get in contact with you?
Well, we're highly accessible, right? I mean, Shane at TucsonFoodie.com. You can hit me up there. There's a partners page on the website that explains how we work with restaurants, in case they're curious, because there are multiple ways we can help a restaurant. They always have news throughout the year, and we want that news. We'd love to break that news. We'll be the first to write it and break it. We don't charge for any of that stuff, right? We have the news desk. Matt Sterner it's his like life's mission to find cool news stories and be the first person to break it. He worked at K-Gun. He loves doing that. So he'll just pump stuff out all day long. So any restaurant in Tucson, in the broader region of Tucson, who has newsworthy information, you're expanding to a new location. You have a new seasonal menu that just dropped. You've got a new chef, whatever it is, new happy hour, whatever. It could be big or small. You can hit our news desk. You can hit Matt at TucsonFoodie.com. There's a form to submit a news story. You can invite the team down. We do this once or twice a week. We head to a restaurant, and Hannah will go, Dalton will go. We'll shoot some photographs. We'll shoot some video, and we drop that stuff. We drop it on Instagram, on Facebook. We might make an article out of it. We love doing that. I love meeting the restaurant owners, and I interview them every chance I get. Are you struggling right now? How can we help? How can we better serve you? And we have a restaurant partnership program that I think I mentioned briefly earlier. It's an all trade program, and here's how it works. In case you're curious, there's no cash exchanged, but this is where the passport comes into play. So restaurants offer vouchers to the passport holders, and we aim for a $40 value, and they can break that up into 4 $10 vouchers if they want to. And I think that's a great marketing exercise in itself, because a voucher only costs the restaurant about 33%, right? So then they put a $40 value in there and spending like whatever that math is, $13 or something. And we're only selling 500 passports, and most passport owners don't use all of their vouchers, just like the entertainment coupon book. Remember that?
Yes.
Which is where I came up with this idea. I don't have any original ideas, by the way. I've stolen every idea. I look at what other cities are doing. Yeah.
You have to look at your competition. It's how you run business.
For sure. I'm like, that looks cool. We could do that in Tucson. Everything from the passport to the Insider Club to the festivals we launched, totally just ripped off of other organizations who succeed. It's way easier to be a fast follower than the first to market. Let the first guy make all the mistakes.
Well, there's so many events here, which is a great thing, that span all types of, interest for people and hobbies and what have you. But the weather, because it's so beautiful all year round, I mean, I can't even keep up with everything that's happening here. But what I have seen is that the local community just really supports these festivals and these events. I mean, they love to show up for their community, which is just amazing. So
yeah, definitely a local feel here in Tucson.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think about taking Tucson Foodie to other cities and launching Santa Fe Foodie or San Diego Foodie or even Phoenix Foodie.
Mm-hmm.
Something Adam thought about, tried a couple times. And we'll see. It's going to be an experiment. I'm not going to do it for a while. Back to Sam's voice in my head. We just got to we got to build that sustainability, that resilience, those processes, that documentation, until it's really repeatable and we can just drop it, repeat. And then the only experiment we're running is that it's a new city, not experiments around product or language or anything.
Yeah, you've got your framework built and you can just duplicate. Yeah.
but it's a different city. So to your point, what's the vibe like in San Diego? Do the locals support local as strongly as Tucsonans do? Will they show up? Will they care? How do we enter a new city? Tucson Foodie's been here for 10 years. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, the people in Tucson, they really come out.
They do.
I think people love living here.
Yeah, they do. I do. For sure. So
me too.
Well, Shane, I can't again thank you enough for coming on the show and sharing everything that you have about Tucson Foodie and being transparent and letting the community know how you support them and how they can support you and just giving us a inside look at your challenges too. It's super eye-opening, and from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I can relate on all of those levels.
I've been dying for somebody to ask me these kinds of questions so that I can be really transparent. Is there anything else that you think everybody should know, or that you're wondering that you feel like I wouldn't answer? Because it's an open book over here.
Well, I know when you and I met, you had said that some people reach out to you and say, what kind of restaurant should I open? And you're like, I don't know.
That's true. Yeah.
I was going to ask you where the trends are going, where you're seeing the trends, but obviously it sounds like you're at the forefront with the vegan festivals that you're doing, but any other trends that you see?
Plant-based is a trend nationally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's growing crazy. I wish local was a trend. It's important for the future of our country and the world, I think, but for so many reasons, not just like local resiliency, but also like sustainability.
Yeah.
That trend is not quite. I have a master's degree in sustainability, and I was hoping that I could use Tucson Foodie in a way to sort of beat that drum a bit. That sustainability, plant-based matters, local matters, all these things are way more sustainable. So eat a little bit less meat, spend a little bit more local. But people are moving at an incredibly slow pace there. So it's not the kind of trend I wish it was. But I don't know. I've made a couple of observations, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I've noticed that really differentiated stuff succeeds. Weird stuff. I mean, like, for example, and this isn't a local spot, but Two Hands Korean corn dogs. There's a restaurant that opened up here in Tucson called Two Hands, and it's a chain. But they came to Tucson, and I was really surprised they came to Tucson because it's like the smallest town they've been to. But they came here for a reason, and wildly successful. They're doing really well. I bumped into the woman who helped bring it to Tucson. They've now opened up 2 other spots. There's 3 now in Tucson.
Wow.
And it's just corn dogs. Weird, wacky corn dogs with all kinds of crazy toppings, rolled in crazy sauces and filled with different things, injected with cheese and sausage. And it's crazy. They're supposed to have a vegan dog pretty soon. I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
It's on the menu, but it says coming soon. It's been that way for like a year. But every time I see a restaurant open, then I'm like, oh, I've never heard. Finally, we have a Bosnian restaurant. That's going to do well because people just want new stuff. Like they want new experiences, new tastes. They want to try things. And when another barbecue spot opens up or another American food restaurant, I'm like, okay, well, how are you different? Like, why are people going to seek you out? What's the differentiation here? Because if there's not something that captures their attention, it's going to be a while before they give it a try.
Yeah.
Right. And then that's tough when you're starting a new restaurant. You have limited time, limited money. You need to get people in there. They need to fall in love, and they need to get that word of mouth and organic marketing happening as soon as possible. That's how successful restaurant. Like when a restaurant has a bad opening, it's a really bad sign. Chances are they'll be dead inside of 18 months.
Yeah, if even that long. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they make it to 18.
You probably know better than I do.
Well, it's I mean, I've opened 13 different restaurants over the course of my career, and you really have to lean into those first 90 days for sure. And a lot of restaurants open up and they're really busy in the first couple of weeks, and they think, oh, this is great, and we're going to be really popular, and then they drop off, which is natural, and they're not ready for that.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think it's so important for the local restaurant scene to continue to be diverse and offer new, exciting concepts to the local, to the people that live here, to encourage diners to continue to go out and have new experiences and just strengthen our culture. And, we have such a huge population of students and snowbirds that spend only part of the year here, right? That I think it's important for us to show up really well and offer them something exciting when they're here, So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, I add one more thing.
Yeah, please.
I've also noticed that restaurants that invest in the community do well.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names here, but I think there are some restaurants that are okay. And I'm not a food critic. I don't have like a trained palate, but there are a handful of restaurants that do so well because the chef and the owner are so visible and friendly, and they invest in the community and they give back and they volunteer and they cook at events and they participate in the competitions. They're not on an island, right? They help other chefs get started. They believe in that, and it pays dividends, and people go there because they want to support that guy.
Yeah.
And the food is fine.
Well, no, it's
right.
I will say that one thing that I've really noticed and appreciated from moving here last year is that this town is so collaborative. I mean, I've spent so much time connecting with as many local restaurant owners as I can. And so many of them know everybody and will say, let me introduce you to this person, come help with events at this, with this location. Or they love each other, they support each other. And that really directly contributes to helping the local dining scene thrive, because leadership is lonely. A lot of restaurateurs are only spending time in their four walls. And when they start to branch out, they feel less lonely. They can be strategic with other restaurant owners. They build that network. They collaborate together. It's about, again, serving the local community, not just about them and their business. Similar to what you said earlier. It's a game changer.
So true.
Yeah.
It really is, man. Yeah, you got to get yourself out of that lonely leader guy at the top, man. It's just such a mental, it's so heavy.
Yeah.
Feeling that way. And you just nobody has to feel that way.
Right. All right, my friend. Great to spend more time with you. Thank you. I look forward to more conversations. Please come back.
Thanks for having me on the show, Kristen. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go listen to that Janos episode.
Yeah, please do. It's a hoot. And I will tell you the one that's coming up, I don't have it scheduled yet, but Janos shares his fantasy of wanting to get arrested by harvesting some local food. And I'll leave it at that.
So. That's funny. Well, you could just volunteer with Ishkashita.
Yes, exactly.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I can picture him just like stealing some Meyer lemons off of some neighbor's tree, and then all of a sudden he gets the cops called on him.
Totally.
And then he's like, "Do you know who I am?"
He has his chef's coat on. Yeah. I love it.
Tucson Foodie would totally write a story about that.
Janos's mugshot. That'd be amazing. So awesome.
I just wanted to preserve some lemons.
Right. Exactly. That's a good impression.
Hilarious.
Awesome. We'll talk to you soon, friend. Okay.
Bye.